Sports is so central in America and so much a part of the aspirations and the entertainment of our young people that I think it's very important as we try to recover from the mistake we made in establishing slavery at the founding of this republic, that sports fully reflect and exploit the talents of everybody that participates in it. The real importance of getting racial equality in sports isn't about sport. It's about the larger context of the country.
Bear fans, your dream is reality. Begin the migration to Miami and Super Bowl 41.
New York Giants are pleased to introduce Jerry Reese as our new Senior Vice President and General Manager.
Good afternoon. We're excited today to announce that Mike Tomlin will be the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You know, when you look around this room and the pictures that we've got up, I was just curious what each of you think of when you see, it's Bobby, Fritz Pollard. I think we had Kenny Washington up here somewhere, of course, Jim Brown. What do you think of, I'll start with you, Mike, when you see these pictures?
Really, I'm trying to figure out why you have my picture up here.
But those are four great moments right there. I mean, that's championship game, Lovey, for you and Mike being introduced as head coach, Jerry being introduced as GM, going to the Super Bowl championship game for me. Those are moments for African American history, and that's awesome. That's what I think.
I got so many phone calls about, Spike Lee called me, who I don't know from Adam. I don't know it from Adam, but he's, a New Yorker, and he was so excited. He left me a message. He said, Jerry, he said, you don't know me. He said, this is American history. He said, my mouth was on the floor just looking at you at this press conference. He said, you don't have to call me back. I just want you to know this. So
you look at what happened, doing this week, but then you look at Fritz Pollard. We're the product of guys like Fritz and what they did before.
In 1921, Fritz Pollard became the NFL's first African-American head coach. 68 years later, Art Shell became the second.
At one point, I wanted to be a coach, and I could have made one hell of a coach. But I wasn't about to go through what I went through as being a player in this game. And, I had an owner tell me, no, ain't gonna be no black coaches here.
You did an excellent job. You were in the game the whole way.
Following Shell's hiring by Al Davis in 1989, more African Americans became NFL head coaches.
When we play, like we play when we play, nobody can beat us.
Dennis Green won nearly 100 games in Minnesota. In his first season in Philadelphia, Ray Rhodes was Coach of the Year. And Tony Dungy resurrected the Buccaneers.
We're just getting started, going where we have to go.
But when Tony Dungy was fired following the 2001 season, attorneys Cyrus Mary and Johnny Conquerin asked University of Pennsylvania professor Janice Madden to conduct a study comparing the success of African American coaches to white coaches.
The African American coaches, on average, had been much more successful than the white coaches, surprisingly so. And given their small numbers, it makes it very difficult to really be able to discern a statistical pattern because you don't have that many people to look at, but yet the result was so stark that it met statistical standards of the differences by race not being due to chance, but in fact reflecting a real pattern. The African Americans, on average, had 9.1 wins a season, whereas whites had 8. At that point, every African American that had ever coached had made the playoffs, something that was true of only 60% of white coaches. I think there was evidence that blacks were being held to a higher standard.
Soon after Professor Madden completed her study, the NFL Diversity Committee, led by Steelers chairman Dan Rooney, created the Rooney Rule.
The Rooney Rule states that a team that's hiring a head coach must interview at least one minority.
Do you think, Tony, the Rooney Rule has been very helpful?
The rule makes you slow down, makes you investigate a lot of people, and you come up with real good candidates. I think that's what's happened.
We're not asking you to hire these people. We're asking you to take a look at them and just give them an opportunity to interview. If you give them an opportunity to interview, everything else will take care of itself.
I think initially a lot of people were like, we don't like this because we're being told what to do. But sometimes you need that. People need to be pushed in all walks of life. We needed the civil rights movement. We needed the Black Power movement.
It is a shame that the Rooney Rule had to be introduced in order for black coaches to be considered, but thank God it was. Because without that rule, without that legislation of opportunity, those men who deserved an opportunity would not have had it.
Before the Rooney Rule, there had hardly been any African-American head coaches in the history of the league. Since then, the NFL went up to 7 in a very short period of time, had 2 head coaches in the Super Bowl. I don't think that this was accidental. I think the implementation of the Rooney Rule was the critical piece that made a difference.
Maybe the rule itself opened a door for me that may have not been open if it had not been for the rule.
20 years from now, we're going to be able to appreciate how that rule changed the NFL. This rule is going to be maybe what the Civil Rights Act was for African Americans in the country.
In my 14 years in training camp, I had never seen a guy come through there who understood the game and knew the game of football the way Tony Dungy did.
Tony Dungy, number 21, was a defensive back with the mind of a coach. But early in his career, some wondered if he had the look of a coach.
Tell me that story, Tony, about the interview that you had, and they talked about your beard or something.
That really wasn't an interview. That was a guy.
I haven't heard this.
Yeah, this is. I first started coaching in 1982, and I'd just come out of playing, and was a young guy, 25, 26 years old.
Good stop for us right there.
I looked like I did when I was a player. And after a year or two, a GM who'd been in a long time, who I really respected, said, hey, if you really want to move up in the NFL, I think you have potential, but you need to shave. That image is not what we're looking for. So I said, wow. So then I went to Dan Rooney and I asked him, I said, this gentleman told me this. What do you feel like? And he said, well, at the Steelers, we don't operate that way. We want you to look how you feel you should look and don't worry about it. But that was the first time it ever hit me that how you look might have a impression on the jobs you're able to get.
Through his different assistant coaching positions, Dungy kept his beard. But keeping the faith that he would someday become a head coach was much more difficult.
This is 23 runs. These guys talk about me being even keel, and I kind of think I am.
You are.
But 1993, I was with the Vikings, and we had the #1 defense in the NFL. And there happened to be 7 head coaching openings that year. And I did not get one phone call. No interviews, not even, hey, we might be interested, you're on the short list. And I have to say I was discouraged then. I said, well, how many times are you going to have the #1 defense in the league and there's that many openings in some places where I knew people and not even casual interest.
Finally, 2 years later, sporting a full beard, Dungy was hired by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Under 8.
One of his first hires was linebackers coach Lovie Smith.
I know you're playing your butt off, all right? Yeah, just keep thinking that way.
Smith was part of a staff that helped Dungy turn the Bucs from perennial losers into a playoff team. And in 2001, the same year Smith became defensive coordinator in St. Louis,
All eyes right here, right now. Seize the day.
Dungy hired Mike Tomlin to be his defensive backs coach.
1, 2, 3, win.
Now, what made you hire Mike?
Mike came with high recommendations from people that I knew and respected. I had never met him, and that's one of the things I tried to do. I'd never met Lovie Smith when I hired him, but the people I respected, Jerry's people, the scouts, that's who I'd ask. Hey, tell me who's out there in college really coaching guys.
But that's unusual, because when you look in this profession, there's a lot of that. This guy played high school football, or this guy coached at San Diego State with this guy, and there's a connection. And I don't want to say it's incestuous, but isn't that sort of a gamble?
Well, the easy thing is to pick guys you know, and they very well may be good, and you do need some people around you that you know, that you feel comfortable with. But if you stick in that sphere, you're going to bypass a lot of good people, and that was always my feeling. And you find out right away when the same names keep coming up, hey, this might be a guy I should talk to.
In 2002, with Dungy gone to Indianapolis, Tomlin's secondary helped the Bucs win the Super Bowl.
There's the dagger! Bucs are going to beat the Raiders! The Bucs do it again! We've been taking them back all season!
Tomlin went to Minnesota in 2006 to become defensive coordinator.
Let's finish this just like we finished our practice, right? Yes, sir. Exclamation point. Detail work, be professional, and then we keep it moving, all right?
In In stark contrast to Tony Dungy, Tomlin had a meteoric rise in the coaching profession, which peaked in January when the bearded Tomlin was hired by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Nothing says the NFL like the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they put a young, rising, 35-year-old black guy in charge of directing the franchise. That's an opportunity that for so long only young white coaches got. Just like that, you got to see what an influence Lovie Smith and Tony Dungy had, how their success has maybe translated to other NFL owners saying, you know, maybe we can take a chance on the guy.
We don't have enough time for me to talk about how I feel about Coach Dungy, but very happy for him and Lovie Smith with what transpired yesterday.
You look at the hiring of a Mike Tomlin. Here's a guy who, unless you're really informed about the NFL, the average fan doesn't know anything about this guy. I mean, it's up to him now to be successful.
The racial barrier being removed only means you're able to get beat up on like the rest of the white guys are. But that's what racial progress is.
You and I were talking earlier, and you wanted to be a coach, right? You wanted to be what these three guys are.
I did want to be a coach. You know, I started out, I coached at Tennessee Martin, and Mike Tomlin came through Tennessee Martin too. So
for a hot cup of coffee,
for a quick stop. But that was my dream at the beginning. I was going to be a coach. And Jeremiah Davis, who's still a scout for the New York Giants right now, he was a secondary coach for Tennessee Martin. So Jeremiah left to be a scout with the Giants, and then Jeremiah started to call me saying, you know, we need a scout. And I had moved up. I was assistant head coach. I was saying, Jeremiah, there's no way I'm leaving. I said, I'm the assistant head coach. I'm not leaving. He's like, please, just think about it. So finally, I thought about it, and 13 years later, I'm the general manager.
You know, behind you, there's a picture of Bobby Mitchell, and we did a whole show on Bobby last year. Bobby was a Hall of Fame player. He was in the front office, never got to be a general manager.
He did every single thing, going at it the right way. He didn't go ranting, raging, hooping, and hollering, and he kept working with the idea that he would get the job eventually. And they didn't give him the job, and that cut him, and that hurt him deeply.
And I was asking him about the frustration of that, and he said that he had had a conversation with Dr. King, and Dr. King told Bobby, these were his words, he said, you have to understand, those of us who are fighting, we don't get anything.
The people behind us, they get the opportunities. We get nothing.
There's a number of people that came before me that did a job, that probably did it a lot better than I could do, but never got that real opportunity.
World champ.
How about that, baby?
How you doing? Hey, that's all right.
And that's why I'll always say, well, yeah, I was the first, but let's give credit to the guys that got close that didn't get there. Those are the real heroes, not necessarily us that got a chance to be first.
My appointment came on Martin Luther King's holiday, and I don't take that lightly.
It was perfect timing, it was absolutely perfect timing for this to happen, and I really feel like it's my time to carry the torch. For lack, I don't want to sound cliche, but it's really my time to carry the torch. As many people went before me who really suffered through this process, and I have to be successful on a lot of levels, and it's my time to just kind of keep the dream alive.
The morning of my press conference, Doug Williams emailed me that morning.
When they finally named Jerry, I probably was happier than Jerry was. I was proud of the Maras for giving him that opportunity.
Doug Williams was the first black quarterback to start a Super Bowl. He helped open doors, but still had to deal with closed minds.
One of the questions that came out the blue was, how long had you been a black quarterback?
Most valuable player of Super Bowl 22 is quarterback Doug Williams of the Washington Redskins.
The first black quarterback to start a Super Bowl, the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl. I hope he puts to bed once and for all about the black athlete in professional football.
To get that email for Doug and all the stuff he had to go through being the black quarterback, can the black quarterback win in the National Football League? Can he win the Super Bowl? He said just to see you sitting there this morning, he said it was worth it for me. So that was chilling for me.
I talked to Doug about coming on my first staff in Tampa in '96. Doug wasn't anxious to do it because, like a lot of guys in that era, there were many smart players that maybe didn't go into coaching because they didn't feel there was any future. And that's the guys I feel bad about.
I've always felt like I was one of the non-fighters, and what I mean is I felt like that I've benefited
from the work that these men have done. I've always felt that way. It's just so many guys that have been influential to me that people don't know about. You know, I worked with Richard Mann down in Tampa for 4 years.
Good. Way to stick it.
Richard's coached in this league 25 years as a wide receiver coach. Very intelligent, very insightful, very good at what he does.
Come on, good route. Gotta get to depth.
For whatever reason, never given the opportunity to advance. Him mentoring me the time that we spent together in Tampa, I don't take for granted the opportunities that I've been afforded, you know. And I think about guys like him when I stick my key in the door sometimes in the morning and understand what I do.
What was a mere Super Bowl storyline for some became unique when viewed through the lens of history.
I think this was the most important day in the history of professional sport in terms of the racial issue. Not only was this the first time in the NFL, it had only happened one time in the history of the NBA, and it hadn't happened in 31 years. Never happened in Major League Baseball, never happened in a men's Final Four, women's Final Four, or BCS bowl game. This was the second time in the history of sport that two African-American head coaches faced each other for a championship game.
It was overwhelming, but I think when it hit me, I got a telegram from Bill Russell. And when I thought about it and stopped, you know, I was a little kid, and they won a championship with him as a coach, and what it meant, and then I had to scratch my head and say, yeah, I'm in the same category now.
I saw two men who I was very proud of, who went through the season and earned the right to be there. They wasn't given nothing. They earned it. Their teams qualified.
Coaching 27 years and not getting there and having some really good teams, I knew how hard it was. I came in the league in 1977. I think there were 7 black coaches total in the whole NFL. And so for me, looking back on that where we'd come from, it was pretty special to be there with Lovie and to say, hey, you know, this is a milestone.
You know, getting to your big game, the Super Bowl, I always wanted to ask you guys, how do you think it was different that it was you two in the game as opposed to if it had been one African-American coach? Do you think it was easier or more difficult because both of you guys were in the game?
I think it was easier to share that and realizing that if I lost, it wouldn't be, oh, you know, there's the chance we had and it didn't happen. If I lost, you know, we're still going to have an African-American head coach as a winner. Then I'd get the calls like Hardy Nickerson and Brooks, you know, guys that played for me say, hey, Coach, I'm happy you're there, but you know I got to be pulling for Lovie.
What was going through your mind at the end of the Super Bowl when you saw Tony getting carried off on the shoulders of his team?
Everyone, of course, has to pull for a guy like Tony to have a championship. So a brief period of time there, and I might say brief, Tony. I was, like everyone else, just excited for Tony and for the Colts.
For me, it was more than a victory for the Indianapolis Colts. It was a victory for America. The fact that this game was played with the class and dignity and great football that it was just a momentous occasion for our nation.
I feel, you know, I could have put my arms around both of them, neck, hug both of them. And I wish I could have gave both of them a victory and say, let's go home. Because that is what it meant to me. Because I've been here when you couldn't do it. I've been here when you couldn't even discuss it.
For African Americans, the time where we couldn't vote or where we were marching just for freedom and basic rights is something we can touch in our own family. And as I was watching the game, I was thinking, wow, what is my grandmother thinking right now? Even for someone like her, a 76-year-old black woman, it meant something to her.
Race has to matter because my son can watch that game and he can see two people look like him coaching in the Super Bowl. He can identify himself with Tony Dungy, and that is priceless. I didn't have that. On Super Bowl Sunday, he could look at that game and say, Daddy, I can be a coach.
Do you see yourself as role models, and somewhere some kid is looking up to you and watching what you're doing, and you're, you know, fueling his dream?
I do. I believe that we are, and I believe that I am. It's funny, the reception that I've received in Pittsburgh, particularly from young African-American males. I went to a big Western PA basketball game. It was Jeanette versus Aliquippa. And so many young men came up to me during that game and expressed with inspiration what I'm doing. is for them. And so you can't help but feel that and feel good about that and understand that, maybe you are encouraging some young men just by simply what you do on a day-to-day basis.
We definitely are role models. I embrace that and just want to help the next person dream.
Dreams deferred no longer. The NFL's newest pioneers now reflect on the hard work they've done and the opportunities they've been given.
In the little small town I'm from in Tiptonville, Tennessee, I'm like a superhero there. They think I'm the greatest there, but I started out this little small town and I worked my way up. So a role model, we are role models to let kids know that you can start from anywhere, work hard, do the right thing, you can work your way up to wherever you want to go. So I don't take that lightly, being a role model for kids and showing them that you can, no matter where you're from, you can make it.
And that's the thing, African American, yes, but small town, Jackson, Michigan, Big Sandy, Texas, Tidewater.
Tidewater, that's a metropolis
Yeah.
compared to where
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you start. If you work hard and surround yourself with good people, you can make a lot of good things happen.